Hi, this is Martin here. Welcome all, welcome board members, and welcome media and public who are listening in on this rather unique way of meeting, and this meeting the Vincent Community Board. First item on the agenda, item 20.2.1, is the confirmation of the minutes from our previous meeting. Could I ask somebody to please move and second that?
Charlene here, happy to move.
Thank you. Second?
Lindley here, second.
Okay, Lindley, thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just remind you of the declarations of interest on pages 17 and 18 of your agenda, and just as if you have any changes to that, could you please let staff know so that can be updated, and if there are any items coming up throughout the day which you feel that you may have some conflict, please let me know. Right, moving on to the next agenda item, which is 20.2.3, the proposed Vincent Community Board Annual Plan and Budget, pages 19 to 127 of your agenda. I'd like to welcome Jotham and Leanne to the meeting. Hi guys.
Good afternoon. Hello, how are you all? This is Leanne.
Good afternoon, Jotham here.
If it's okay with the board, what I propose is that we take the paper as read. Remembering the journey we started on when we started with a rates income of around proposed 7.5%, which equaled an average 4.9% pre-consultation and clearly pre-COVID-19. Based on the feedback we've received and also the meeting with the executive committee, we've revised this budget to look at ways to amend our budget without changing our levels of service materially. So before we go through the report as such, I would like Jotham to be able to take you through a presentation just so we can kind of revisit where we've been and where we hope to end up. Hoping that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne. Over to you, Jotham.
Okay. Thank you, Jotham here. So I'll quickly take you through this presentation, and then Leanne will continue with the report. Okay. So this is a recap of what we presented to Council in February this year. As you can see, we're allowing for growth. We had an average per rateable unit increase of 4.9 across the district. The next slide is this is specific to the Vincent Community Ward, and we had an average rateable. We had an average rate increase from 498 from the previous year to 540 current, what we were proposing for the 2020-2021 budget. If we go on to the next slide, following the direction from the executive committee to revisit the annual plan figures, staff have proposed to reduce the current budget by 368k. So this is broken out by the 4 items you see on your screen right now, and there's 222 in savings that we think we can carry over to help us with the pools. There's detailed seismic assessment that we're proposing to postpone to the next financial year, which is 2021-22. We were asked to reduce the grants budget by 50%, but we're only able to reduce it by 38%. And this is because some of those grants had already been committed to by the community board. And then we're also proposing to reserve fund the LTP costs and spread them across for 3 years instead of having one hit in next year, spread them for the next 3 years.
To smooth the rates.
Yes. Okay. So in the next slide, this is with the proposed changes in the previous slide. This brings the rate income down by 368K. So from 3.2 million down to 2.8 million, which is about 35,000 less than the current year budget. And if you look at the average dollar per unit, that has gone down compared to this current year. So on to the next slide. This is a representation of rates income from each ward. Assuming all the community boards accept the proposed changes that we have put forward, this will be the rates income distribution by ward. As you've noticed, Vincent has the largest percentage, and this is because Vincent has the largest number of reserves, parks, halls, and ratepayers in the district. Moving on to the next slide. So these are pretty much high-level numbers of where we are currently with the proposed changes. So the rates with the proposed changes would have a rates decrease compared to the current year of 35,000. This is equivalent to 1.2% for just the Vincent ward rates, and we maintain a 1.7 growth. So the ratepayer numbers have gone up from 5,800 to 5,900 in the Vincent ward. So next, what are our next steps? So today and the next 2 days we'll be presenting to all the community boards, and on the 18th and or the 19th we'll be presenting to council all the proposed changes that we've brought to the community boards, and we hope to adopt an annual plan by 3rd June 2020. So right now I'm opening the floor for questions on the presentation or the report.
Hi, it's Lindley here. Is it okay if I speak, Martin?
Fire away, Lindley, thank you.
Just regarding the cemetery costs in the report, is that the tree planting that we have a discussion a bit later in the meeting? If we move this report, will it preclude any discussion on the tree planting at the cemetery further down the track?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm still looking to see if there's anything.
Page 22 of the capital expenditure in the report. That it's got, yeah. Is that the tree planting at the Alexandra Cemetery?
I'll have to quickly check the detail. I'm not entirely sure. Sorry about that.
Okay, I just wondered if it would preclude any discussion we have on the other item further down the agenda if we move this report.
Jotham, it's Martin here. If I can come in, Linda, you are quite correct. That is the budget set aside for the works to be done. But if you recall in the report, the recommendation that comes out is probably going to satisfy the concerns of those neighbours, right? And if we did make changes, yes, that would again reflect in the capital works program. Okay, so it doesn't affect what we're talking about now, but it could, and be again another saving.
Yes.
Understand it? All right.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Hello, Martin, it's Anna here. Could I ask a question? Page 21, and look, this is could be completely irrelevant, but I'm just looking at conferences and courses costs. Now that we're all quite Zoom savvy and certainly Microsoft Teams savvy, I'm just wondering if those course costs can be reduced at all.
Yes, I'll let Leanne answer that.
I'm trying to see where it is. I'm sorry. Oh, conferences and courses.
Yes.
I would need to check that before I respond, because even in lockdown days, some of the training we've done for Sorghum, etc., through their webinars still incurs a cost. So even though we're we're tech savvy, we still end up incurring costs as a result of online training.
Mm.
We're pretty tight and mean when it comes to actual travel.
Sure. Just a query around that one. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll move forward.
Sorry, it's Russell here. Again on page 21, I note there the main variances there. Fees from the Clyde Recreation Reserve are no longer received as the campus being leased. I presume though that the lease income is being received.
That's Leanne here. I can respond to that. Yes, we've acknowledged the revenue, and we've also removed costs that we no longer incur as a result of having handed out that lease, issuing that lease.
Russell again here. I do note though later on again there was quite a significant cost for water lines associated with that reserve. So we're still up for quite a few costs associated with the running the campground.
We're up for the cost for capital projects that, and I would have to go back to, I would imagine Gordy over this and come back to you, but that may not be specific to the lease. It may be specific more to the area. I'd need to check that.
Right, I think it was actually quite specific for the campground. I think it was a water line, I think.
Okay, I can follow up with that.
Right, thank you very much indeed.
Martin here, Russell. Things like that are capital works, which would tend to be, to simplify it, the landlord's responsibility, not necessarily the lessee's. But Leanne will come back to us and confirm or otherwise. Okay. Does anybody else have any queries of Jotham while we're here before we move on? That being the case.
If that being the case, then put in front of you is the resolutions to receive the report, accept the revised ward annual plan budget, and recommend that council can use this for their adoption.
Now I'll move that. Is somebody prepared to second?
Yes, I'll second that. It's Russell here.
Thank you, Russell. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. Item 20.4.
Thank you.
Jotham and Leanne are still with us. Pages 128 of your agenda. Fees and charges. Please concentrate on the ones which are relevant to the Vincent ward. And again, which one of you two is taking us through this?
Jotham here. I'll be presenting the report.
Okay.
Yeah. So the purpose of the report is to provide the fees and charges schedule for 2020-2021 relating to the Vincent ward. We have attached a fees and charges schedule for the entire district. However, we've highlighted in blue the fees and charges specific to the Vincent ward. So taking the report as read, I'll take any questions you have on this report.
Hi, it's Lindley here. I just wanted to query on page 131 on the airport landing fees. Why the private aircraft fees have gone down?
Airport landing fees.
Leanne here. I think Gordy's around. There was a reason for this, and I think they had been put up inadvertently. We've aligned them.
Okay. Thank.
Martin here. Does anybody else have any queries? Everybody happy? Okay, I'll ask someone to move and second the recommendations.
Roger here. I'll move it.
Move it. Second.
Charlene here, happy to second.
Thank you, Charlene. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Right. Item 20.2.5, page 157 of your agenda, financial report again. Jotham, you're staying there and joined by Rona. Welcome, Rona.
Yeah, good afternoon, thank you.
We're in your capable hands.
Yeah, so I'll take the report as read. I would just like to address 3 points mainly. Firstly, the asset found relating to the central storage building. I would just like to talk around that a little bit. So the central storage building was not included in the property list that was given to QV at the end of June 2019 for valuations, and therefore it was not picked up by finance at this stage. As we reconciled with that list, the valuation that QV gives us back. However, in the subsequent months, on our monthly reconciliations, capex to the central story building came through that needed capitalisation, and that is when we picked up that the building was not in the asset system. We requested a valuation from QV and have put it in our books. Just want to also make a note that the transaction actually does have a null value effect, as it actually contrasts out with a gain in P&L and against the capex cost. Secondly, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the development contributions, as that is also a very big variance at this stage, and it relates to the Alex Water projects. As we are very close to the year end at the moment, it will probably remain a variance as such, and hopefully that income will be able to be carried forward. The third point I'd like to mention, as we are 3/4 of the way through the year, we have only spent 16.8% of our capital budget so far. And obviously due to the current situation, that would probably remain low for the remainder of the year as well until the financial year end. And hopefully the balance of the capex will also be included in the carry forwards. So that is all from me. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Does anybody have any questions? I take it that is a no. The recommendation is the board receives that report. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
Charlene, happy to second.
Thank you, Charlene. Those in favour?
Yes.
Against? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jotham. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, Rona.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, the Clyde Earnsbury Rugby Football Club
Thank you.
Incorporated lease. Are we getting ahead of time here? Very much so. Christina, are you with us?
I am, Martin. How are you all?
Welcome, welcome. We'll let you take us through this report. You can just take it that it's all been read, and you might want to summarise it and give us the edited highlights, but over to you.
Really, this one's a fairly straightforward report. The purpose of the report is for the board to consider issuing a new ground lease, but it's to formalise a long-standing occupation by the Clyde Earnscrew Rugby Football Club on part of the Clyde Recreation Reserves. So really, is there any questions out there?
Russell here. Yes, hi Christina. Just a couple on this one. I noticed there is a sort of a passing reference to the cricket club. Now, my understanding is that both the rugby club and the cricket club are both ended up as amalgamated clubs. But the cricket club, I'd like to get a little bit of clarification as to what the situation is with the cricket club, because my understanding is that it has been a bit of a shared use of that, what was called the domain, but the lease is only being granted to the rugby club.
Yes, sure, I can answer that. To give you a bit of background there, when this report was first sort of put together and negotiated, we weren't aware of the cricket club's interest in the pavilion. And when I looked back into it, that's because the original Dunstan Cricket Club has amalgamated not with the rugby club, but with the Molyneux Cricket Club. And it's mainly around their golden oldies that use that, excuse me, that facility. So while they didn't want to sort of be, say, the head leasor in this, or leasee, sorry, in this case, or tenant, they still wanted to be recognised within the agreement. So I've actually sat down with the rugby club and the cricket club, and we've come to the inserting that bottom condition that you see down there, that the leasee must grant either a licence or a sublease to the Molyneux Cricket Club, allowing them exclusive use of the club rooms during the times that the cricket club's sporting activities take place, and nominal rent of $1 per annum. And these terms have been agreed to by not only the rugby club, but also the Molyneux Cricket Club as well, as being suitable to them.
Excellent.
You happy
Thanks.
with that, Russell?
Absolutely. No, that's really good. My understanding is actual fact that it's not only golden oldies, but I think there's a fair use by in the summertime by juniors in the cricket area.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, we've got a recommendation there on pages 161. Russell, would you like to move the recommendations as outlined?
Would.
And second?
Oh, it's Ian here. I'll second that.
Anna here.
Anna, thank you. And all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Christina.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Gordy, are you with us?
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Mr. Gordon Bailey from Parks and Rec is going to take us through this is still currently a draft, isn't it? Because it hasn't been ratified, of Council's proposed tree policy.
Thank you for that, Martin.
We're well ahead of ourselves, so you can take us through it page by page if you care to, but I don't think you need to do that. Carry on.
I don't think so. People have better things to do, probably. Just one correction on the recommendation, though, that it should be Tree Policy 2020. So if we can correct that before you move that would be great. But yeah, I think I'm just happy to answer any questions. It's quite a detailed report, I hope, and people have had time to read it, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Yeah, hi, Gordon. Where you go?
Oh,
Ian,
right.
There you go.
Hi, Gordon. It's Ian Coney here. I noticed there's reference to considerations of the trees in regards to future growth and overhead power lines. I couldn't see anything in there specifically in regards to species and proximity future route growth and the likely impact on sealed surfaces such as footpaths and roads and things like that. Is that covered anywhere in the policy?
Yeah, so that's covered with it's dealt with using root guards and things like that, and also I think common sense planting by not planting right next to a footpath without using such things as root guards.
Gordy, we've lost you.
Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, okay. Did you hear none of that?
No, bits of it was breaking up. Ian, did you get the gist of that?
Okay.
Yeah. The question was really just the considerations that are taken to certain species and how their roots form in regards to nearby sealed surfaces, really.
Yeah, so we would use root guards there and appropriate plant species that have deeper rooting capabilities rather than those that are surface rooting.
Thanks for that.
Chair here, does anybody else have any comments or queries?
Roger here. Just a quick question. Have you considered the fire risk from some certain species of tree that are more prone to fire danger?
Yes, I don't think we've got any of those on our list, and typically they would be plantation type trees anyway, and they would be dealt with under like forestry investment type processes anyway. But yes, we have considered those things.
Thank you.
Anna here. I would just add to that, Roger, that's a good point. Cordyline australis, your cabbage tree, as it's commonly known, is probably one of those plants with their leaf build up underneath them as they drop.
Yes, particularly annoying for the lawnmowers.
Yeah, for those who mow lawns. Yeah, that's right.
True.
Hey, I have one, just I guess it's a query in your considerations to sustainability and the environment. Sorry, I've just got to pull my note up that I wrote. It would be interesting or perhaps useful to add that these trees can provide bank stability or erosion control in there as well.
Okay, yep, good, thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Anybody else want to comment? Right, the recommendations A, B and C with a change to the tree policy date recording as 2020. Can I have a mover, please?
Charlene here, happy to move that.
Thank you, Charlene. Second?
Roger here. I'll second it.
Thank you, Roger. In favour? Aye.
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 Against? Carried. Thank you, Gordy. Don't leave your chair. Item 20.2.8, pages 204 of your agenda. In-kind sponsorship and support for primary school sport.
Yeah, so just some background here. So this report started before lockdown, and since then some of the proposed sporting events haven't happened, and also the by I guess signing off the fees and charges just before eliminates sports ground fees and charges in the Molyneux ward for school kids, so that's not going to be a charge that these people would incur in the future if that gets approved by council. So what we're looking for essentially through this is some waivers or some support in kind for using the swimming pool for their, I guess, their heat events. And that's to around about a value of about $325 per annum. So they're looking for that to be in kind sponsorship or essentially waived for their sports groups. So it would be looking at supporting, I guess, kids being active in their sporting events across the district, and in the swimming pool area particularly. So happy to answer any questions.
Nobody got a question? It's pretty straightforward, and it's good to see us supporting something like that. I've been made well aware of that by some gentle lobbying by the proponent. So I'm quite happy to move A, B, and C. Can I have a seconder, please?
Russell here, happy to do that.
Thank you, Russell. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Gordon. Right. Item 20.2.9, pages 208 of your agenda. Planting Cemetery Reserve. Marie, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm just going to work on the basis that the report is taken as read, and in terms of how I have approached the matters that have been raised both in the public forum in December last year and over a period of months since then. The approach I've taken is to weigh up the issues, the fact that it's a multi-year project, the fact that some of the elements have already progressed, things like the Salvation Army being recited, for example, fencing in place, and seeking to get the board's approval to proceed with the planting along the Dunstan Road boundary, which would screen the Salvation Army operation, and also at the north end of the Arnott Street part of the reserve to achieve that same goal. And the third part is to remove the encroachments along the Arnott Street east side of the area and install common boundary fencing. So I guess that's the summary of what the report is seeking from you today.
Marie, can you just outline, there's some significant changes from what was originally proposed and what a number of residents and of that area who turned up at that public meeting. Can you just outline where those changes are for the benefit of the board, please?
So my understanding of the project history is that council sought, through the Vincent Community Board, sought to reclassify the cemetery land into reserve in preparation for cemetery development requirements of the future. And as part of that process, a formal consultation event took place, and the final result was that a series of fencing, planting, beam expansion, road installation, that kind of thing came out of the decision-making process. And I can't be clear exactly on what was necessarily the understanding of the community at the start of the process, but certainly at the end of it, the plan that I've attached to this report indicates the projects that were to be delivered over about 10 years, and they've all been factored into the 2018 long-term plan. So along the way, the results of that consultation process were communicated specifically to submitters, and then specifically to those parties that council identified had encroached onto the reserve. They're not necessarily the same people. And then thirdly, when I've proceeded to implement the project last year, communicated with all residents, irrespective of their encroachment or not, but certainly their being resident in the street, I communicated with them that this project had come through that long-term plan with that background about the reclassification process, and that we were ready to progress with the fencing and planting elements. And that then resulted in some residents seeking the board's permission to defer, particularly the planting along the Arnott Street east part of the site. That's my summary, I guess, of the background to the project.
Marie, thank you. Charlene, can you go first, please? If you've got anything to say, do you want to comment on this?
No comment, thanks. I think, yeah, it's been well out of and lots of consultations. So yeah, understood. Thank you.
Anna, any comments?
No comments from me.
Ian?
No, nothing from me.
Lindley?
I just had a bit of interference there and I missed what she said about deferring the planting at the end there. Sorry.
Currently, my understanding, if I can very briefly summarise Marie's report, is that if you look at the photograph on page 212, we'll go ahead with the Zone 1 planting, which is basically a barrier between Dunstan Road and the site of the Salvation Army's vegetable garden and woodcropping. We will go ahead with Zone 2 planting because there's been the majority of residents there want that to happen, they want the fencing put in, and there is no intrusion on council land by any of those houses. Zone 3 is where the majority of the people who were at that public meeting who were against any of the planting. No planting will go ahead in Zone 3. However, we will be instructing those people who have encroached onto council land to remove any buildings, objects or whatever being used on the land, and the fence will be reinstated on the correct boundary. That's how I understand it. Is that, am I correct in that very brief summation?
Martin, it's Mara here. Yes, that is the way that I'm reporting the issue. Just bear in mind that the project in its entirety is to do all of that. What I've really done is taken on board the feedback that you have received from the community and found a way through that. However, the options still present themselves to proceed with the project in its entirety, which is including the fencing and the planting down Zone 3, or you could choose to do nothing at Zone 3, leave the current encroachments and existing fencing intact. What I'm really promoting is to take them effectively the middle ground, actually deal with the issues of encroachment and common boundary fencing and put the planting aside.
Thank you. The comments that I have received from residents, it's a general acceptance by not all, but by the majority, that if you've encroached onto council land, you've got to have some sort of legal mechanism, and as you've outlined in your report, the mechanisms are fairly convoluted. So you need to get off our land and we'll put a fence up. And there's general consensus, the feedback I've been getting is agreement with that. And also the not going ahead with the planting is probably going to satisfy a lot of those residents' concerns. So that's my comment. Now, Lindley, I'm going to go to you now for comment.
I think the residents that have expressed concerns to me are concerned that this will go ahead and the cost of that, in the light of the COVID-19 situation, that we are going to come out of the other side and we don't know what sort of world we're going to have then, and maybe spending this amount of money on planting probably as frivolous in that regard. I also had a question about the grazing, just when that licence runs out, and does that go to tender, or how is the person chosen that can graze on that land?
Just allow me to check the dates on the grazing licence. It's a 5-year term and it started in 2000 and, sorry, I don't have the top of my head.
Just a thought that it seemed a very reasonable opportunity to graze, and whether that could be of benefit in raising more funds towards the cemetery. Thinking in terms of that.
The agreement started in 2018. The earnings from that tenancy are so minimal that it really has no impact on the cemetery activity. The grazier is responsible for costs, but that's about it. The normal process for tenanting reserve land is to advertise and publicly and evaluate those that come forward. How the tenant was selected for this process, like for the current licence, I can't be sure, I'm afraid.
By not progressing Zone 3 planting, Linley, there will be a considerable saving. There is a necessity to do the Zone 1 because that is the barrier between to shield the Salvation Army's doings with, with their garden, which just, so it's actually offers some sort of visual security, I suppose, for want of a better word. And the residents in Zone 2, along Zone 2, support the proposal. So those residents who are most vocal against it are in that Zone 3. Roger, you've been involved with this too. Do you want to add a comment?
Yes, please. I had a discussion with Olivia Wildy, who's the manager of Living Options. They have a property right at the very corner where Zone 2 meets Zone 3, the outer corner there. And their the back of their building almost comes to the actual legal boundary. And she said she didn't seem to be too concerned about where the fence went, but she was concerned about subsequent plantings and said that the inhabitants of the property are very vulnerable, and that she was concerned that some of them would react very badly if there were trees planted too close to the house.
Roger, just to clarify that, when you're looking at their back boundary, are you talking the boundary which is on Zone 2 or the boundary along Zone 3?
The boundary on Zone 3.
Well, if we're not planting there, that should go a long way to placate her concerns, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Good, thank you. And yes, I am well aware of the fact that they're back of their boundary, because we've had this discussion in the past. It's very, very close to our boundary, and at this stage, there's very little we can do about that. It's a mistake that the developers of that particular building didn't do their homework and get their limbs checked and see where their boundaries were. And I can't see how we can be held responsible for that. Russell.
On Zone 2, you'll see by that photograph that this old water race, and there's a paragraph there on page 214 about the heritage status of the water race. The water race is not actually a race per se, it's just an embankment now. There's in the report there, it says that it's on the onus on the council to prove without doubt one way or another that it's not historical and things. I think that that's actually not pertinent, because the water race continued well down over the road, over Dunstan Road, and I think you can probably see remnants of it in that photograph. So that was removed many years ago. This embankment is more than 5 metres away from the legal boundaries, and so when we're talking about the plantings for Zone 2, which were an agreed thing that the council would do with the residents, and it got missed, and so that's why I think both myself and Ian and I think Roger went down there and spoke to some of those residents. They would, I think, probably like to see that embankment flattened, and that would mean that the plantings could take place within the 5 metre buffer zone, because otherwise, where else are they going to put the trees, the plantings? Is it going to be on the house side of that embankment? or on the embankment or on the other side or whatever. The embankment is going to have to be got rid of at some point when it reverts to cemetery use. So I really question whether or not, by just saying that we don't know when it was put in there, is really holds up in terms of an argument.
Murray, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I did try to establish its heritage status, and in doing so contacted an archaeologist and assessed the various tools we've got available to us, including the district plan. And really the comment there is to advise you that council has to confirm that beyond reasonable doubt it's not a heritage item. We weren't able to do that, and so what I'm really doing is informing you that that's where we're at this point in time.
Is the status of that likely to change? Any given time in the future? Probably not.
Yeah, from my point of view, given that it's not intact, and having been in contact with the archaeologist who's very familiar with the area and with the tools available to confirm or prove its background and its therefore its heritage, I in my unofficial, unqualified opinion, would suggest that that's not likely to change.
Yep. Okay. So then how does that affect your thinking of where the actual trees will be planted?
I was working on the basis that the rabbit-proof fence would go on the Salvation Army side of, let's call it a mound, and the planting would sit between the mound and the fence. And I know that creates quite a wide buffer, and perceivably that might create more of a maintenance issue, but I thought combining those two things together, we end up with a result that's workable, doable, and doesn't bring into question whether or not we have damaged an archaeological site by removing it when it was unproven. And so I've kind of taken the safer approach, if you like.
Russell, I'm going to go to you and ask if you're happy with what you've just heard.
Yes.
Something yes or no, thank you.
No. I think the fact that the mound or the remnants of the water race were actually removed in its continuance over Dunstan Road and down into the housing and things probably answers the question about whether or not it was
not necessarily so, because there's lots of examples of partial remnants of heritage sites which are still under protection but have been, one end of a race is gone while some of it still, there's examples all around the district. So, but I think what Murray is basically being quite cautious here with her proposal, so that by not damaging the existing water race and by putting her fencing and planting so it protects it, doesn't touch it. She's just being conservative and playing on the safe side.
Yes, I can see that. I think it's going to lead to, as Murray says, there's going to be issues there of how that strip of land between the legal boundary and the embankment is maintained in the future, because that becomes really no man's land. And so it's got the potential to become a little bit unruly, to say the least.
Perhaps it's Murray here again. If I could perhaps comment on that.
Please.
When that site or when that space is developed, so planted, fenced off, etc., so responsibility for maintenance and to keep it up to standard sits with council. So irrespective of whether it's planted or bare grass, that responsibility remains, and therefore that would be taken on by Parks and Recreation to manage. So it wouldn't be abandoned.
No, I can understand that, but just to clarify that would not be within the grazed area.
Correct. You'd have a rabbit-proof fence on the inside of the current mound and then plantings, and then
Yep.
there'd be a strip, right? So it's not part of the area which is actually currently being grazed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And having gone down there and had a look at the aspect from the people's houses, it's actually quite pleasant looking out, even though it's just basically bare ground to a raised mound and to plantings. It's, to my mind, is not unattractive. Anyway, Lindley, sorry, you wanted to say something.
Just clarifying, another one of the concerns was that plantings could be a fire hazard, and I'm imagining they'd be native and below 1.5 metres. Is that also?
That is the philosophy I'm working with in terms of the plant species, and the height was specified as part of the decision making that the community board made in 2016. So yes, on both counts.
Thank you.
Russell here again. Just if that is the case with Zone 2, that will sort of make the access, pedestrian access from the end of Arnott Street down into Dunstan Road, which is a bit informal at the moment. It goes between the legal boundaries and a grazing fence that's been put up there. But that'll make that certainly a lot easier for the residents of Arnott Street.
Marie, comment on that? That's
The project wasn't intending. Oh, beg your pardon.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, sorry. The project wasn't intending to encroach in any way on that pedestrian space. And I know it's informal, but it's clearly working for the community. So I wasn't intending to once again encroach into that space.
And just one last question, Murray from Russell. The residents, as I understand, the plantings that going along there, there's been some sort of previous agreement or some understanding that the trees or the plants that would be planted along there wouldn't be so high to obscure the view they have of the tops of the mountains and things.
That's
I think
great.
I think they were talking about sort of 2 metres high maximum.
1.5 metres was the decision made by the former board, and it's doable with plant selection. It will take some renewing of those plantings from time to time to get the most benefit out of them, but it just means that tree species, for example, aren't selected.
No, I think they'll be very happy with that overall.
Thank you all. Does anybody else have anything they want to say before I ask? We've got some. I'm going to ask you to go to your recommendations.
Through the chair, this is Mari speaking. Just in respect to recommendation C, at the time addressing encroachments, should you approve that, and fencing the common boundaries was completely achievable by the end of the financial year, but given where we are now, that's not likely. My suggestion there is, if you do agree with that approach, that perhaps the end of the calendar year, the end of 2020, be considered.
So is everybody clear what we're going to be voting on? We're agreeing to screen planting along Boundary Road for the Salvation Army. We're agreeing to screen planting on the northern end of Arnott Street as a buffer zone. We are agreeing not to do any planting on the eastern side of Arnott Street, and there will be a common fence, but we're also asking those residents who have encroached on council land to remove those encroachments. Is everybody clear on that? If so, I'm going to put the recommendation A, B and C. Can I have a mover, please?
I'm happy to move that, Charlene.
Thank you, Charlene. Second?
Russell here, happy to second that.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Gordy, thank you. Marie, thank you for that. That was, it's been a long, involved process, and no matter which way you cut it, I don't think we're going to make everybody happy, but I think that's a very good compromise to what was originally proposed. So I thank the staff for their time and energies in that, and we'll wait and see what sort of feedback we get from our residents. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right, item 20.2.10, easement of recreational reserve in favour of Aurora Energy Limited, and I welcome Linda to the meeting, if she's with us. Page 223 of your agenda.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. So today I am here to request an easement over the Blackmore Park Recreation Reserve in favour of Aurora Energy. April Construction own an area of 8.3 hectares behind the reserve on Lanes Road. They have been given approval by council to trench across Blackmore Park for the purpose of connecting to the council water and wastewater services, and they have also been given the approval to connect or Aurora to extend their network via the same trench. The difference being that Aurora will need an easement as they're not a council service. So that's what I am requesting on behalf of April Construction today.
Guys, any discussion, board members? Pretty straightforward. Would you agree? Would somebody like to move the recommendations?
Charlene here, happy to move ABC.
Thank you, Charlene. Second?
Roger here.
Thank you, Roger. Those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Linda. Thank you. Next item.
Thank you.
2.11, pages 229 of your agenda. This basically is just ratifying the appointment of Charlene as chair of the Blossom Festival Committee. If you recall, we waited until the Blossom Festival had their AGM, and Charlene was appointed the chair. So, do I have a mover and a seconder? Those recommendations, please.
Ian here, I'll move that.
Thank you, Ian.
And Russell,
Second.
yeah, happy to second that.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Carried. Okay. Governance reports. Pages 237 to 247.
I'm happy to move that we received those. Charlene here.
And I'll second, taken as read. All those in favour?
Aye.
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 Governance reports, pages 248 to 274. Now, have you been through these? Are there any matters coming out of we wish to discuss? So these are the status reports on 248. So the recommendations, we receive them. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder?
Charlene, happy to second.
Thank you. The Mayor's report on 275. An apology from Tim. He's had to pull away to Dunedin at the 11th hour. Any comments, board members? There being none, I'll move that we adopt this report. Those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Chair's report. That's me. Oh, well, I think probably the most striking thing in the last 6-7 weeks has been how well on the majority of this community is actually hung in there and looked after itself, which makes me very proud to be part of it. As you can see, my report with the Executive Committee of Council have been meeting. I've had a fairly intensive hearings panel last week and a number of informal meetings on Teams. And it's very much a business as usual approach in adapting to some of this new technology. It's going to be nice when we can get back and be in the same room together and have hugs and handshakes and, dare I say, enjoy council's caterers. But I think it has been a very trying time for many people, and we have, as a community, looked after each other really well. I mean, touching base with some of the oldies in our pensioner flats has been a particularly pleasant part of the day for me. I've enjoyed my chats with some of the gentlemen that I've been charged with looking after. The general feeling around town of people looking after each other makes me proud to be part of Alexandra and Central as a whole. That's me. Thank you. I'll move my report.
Second that, Martin.
Thanks, Lindley. Right, members' reports. So I think I'll start off with Charlene and work my way down the line. Charlene, all yours.
Thanks, Martin. As you can see from mine, the Blossom Festival Committee have been having a number of Zoom meetings. In the uncertain times, we've been trying to forge ahead with as much planning as we can, in the hope that we can bring some form of a festival to our community. I think it's going to be much needed. So we're still planning to deliver a fantastic day for our locals as much as possible, but of course it will be formed and shaped by what we're told and how we're told things can run. As far as the Puna Rangatahi Youth Trust goes, you'll see there's been a number of meetings as well, and it's kind of been business as usual but online, which has been really successful. And I was really lucky to attend a youth summit with over 300 other people who work with young people from around the world, and just hearing what the needs are and how they're meeting those needs and just learning from each other was absolutely amazing, really. And just talking with local business owners, I've been lucky enough to have a few meetings, and just preparing for the hard times ahead. There's been a number who are feeling that they'll probably have to close their doors. They'll keep going as long as they can. So that's been really humbling. And I think the other side of that is that people have really got on board. We've had the Shop Local campaign for quite a while, but people really seem to be getting on board with that and really supporting local businesses, which I just think is fantastic. And that's probably enough from me. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks, Charlene. Anna.
Just trying to pull my one up here, juggling multiple screens. Yeah, it's been a while since we've reported, isn't it? Really, I'm not going to talk through everything, but KACB have had their AGM. They had a pretty good turnout for that and highlighted some good successes for the year and some challenges moving forward. Next up for them is a planning meeting, which obviously has been postponed, but there's a planning sheet which has gone out to everyone to fill in and have a think about what they want to look at for that. Mad for CO or Green Drinks have been on hold recently, but the last meeting that we had, we looked at that national policy statement for freshwater management, and there was a group submission put in prepared and put in from that meeting. So that felt really positive. Community House Board have been meeting quite regularly through lockdown, and with the prospect of opening up again next week, there's a number of measures that are needing to be put in place in terms of safety for not only the staff and the tenants, but also for the public. And there's quite a bit of chat also around the increased need for social services as a result of lockdown, and obviously the economic downturn as well that we're all, many of us will be facing. So there's, the board are discussing how best Community House move forward to provide those needs that the community will be requesting from them. That's all from me.
Thank you, Anna. Ian. Mr. Cooney.
Hi. So with the Promote Alexandra group, they haven't met since the lockdown started. Before that, I attended a meeting and they were discussing their role in the community and how they can support other local businesses through online marketing and promotions. They discussed the Beer Fest this year and how that went, and some changes that they can make to improve that for next year. In regards to the Recreation Reserve Committee at Omakau, they haven't met since the lockdown and things closed up there. Before the lockdown, they're looking into having another meeting to sort out some wage and salary issues with the caretaker of the lady who looks after the campground there. And other than that, I've just been involved in the weekly council catch-ups, discussing the 0% rates increase and ways to go about that.
Thanks, Ian. Lindley. Hello.
I've just it's been a strange month, or 6 weeks, 7 weeks since we first had our lesson on how to participate in Zoom meetings. I feel quite professional at it now in a way. So we've had various, it's been a difficult time abiding by the rules of lockdown, along with balancing the requirements of being an essential service as far as funeral directors that we are. And I was very disappointed last night to find that funerals are still limited to 10 for the foreseeable future, which has caused huge distress to a lot of members of our community, so who are hoping to have funerals in the next couple of weeks. So we just have to work through that, safety being the first priority. Like the others, I've been totally impressed by local businesses and how entrepreneurial they've been, finding ways to assist. That's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindley. Roger.
Thank you, Martin. First comment is that the onset of the virus pandemic has put paid to a lot of the activities that I had planned. So I've been involved in planning for art exhibitions at Central Stories, and we don't know when we'll be able to have those. I started with rehearsals for the Central Otago Regional Orchestra for performances that were going to be this month, and of course that is no longer going to happen, and perhaps it won't happen until next year. I was involved in planning U3A lectures, and they came to a halt, of course. We're trying to use video link-ups to make lectures available, but that's a work in progress. A meeting of the Mannaburn Recreation Reserve Committee on 24th of February, it was noted that rubbish dumping is an ongoing problem at the reserve, and wondered whether that could be alleviated if the council supplied a rubbish skip there. I had 2 meetings in regard to Central Cinemas wish to do substantial alterations to the Central Stories meeting room, the one that was previously the SBS room. And a note that such alterations would severely compromise the usefulness of the meeting room for any purpose other than the cinema foyer. And my view is that a dedicated entrance at the rear of the cinema would be more appropriate to their needs. I attended 3 meetings at Alexandra Clyde and District's Business Group. The first one was on State Highway 8 up at the Half Mile, looking at potential retirement village site, but that didn't seem to gain much traction. 28th of February, a breakfast meeting, which was addressed by Tara Bates and Louise van der Voort on subdivision at new subdivision at Molyneux. And 18th of March, retirement village options were discussed, and plans for Leaning Rock Retirement Village seemed to be stalled, but there was a strong feeling at the meeting that the Vincent Community Board has been uncooperative on the matter, and we felt at the time that it was appropriate for the Community Board to put it back on the agenda somewhere in the near future. Of course, now that's probably been pushed back, and I don't know what the appropriate timing for that would be. I've mentioned the Arnott Street affair, so I won't go over that. KACB, I attended their AGM, which provided me a good overview of the wide variety of projects the group was engaged in. And finally, I've had a whole series of meetings with regard to Central Otago REAP, board meeting, AGM on the 5th of May, this was all via Zoom. I was re-elected as the chair, but I pointed out that I'd been a board member since 2011 and chair since 2013. I gave notice that I would step down at the 2021 AGM. I've had ongoing meetings with the manager of REAP. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Russell, last but not least.
Yeah, well, I think certainly emphasise the way that local businesses have responded to the whole pandemic thing. There's been a number of people that have particularly enjoyed the deliveries of groceries from the Clyde Foursquare shop out here. And my understanding is that it's been so successful that it may even be continued after the level 1. But certainly the buy local and use local has been widely appreciated. Certainly the food places around Clyde for coffee and things have been very well attended. I think the only other thing I would just mention is that the hospice fundraising dinner, which I've noted there, has been put off till October, and hopefully by then we'll be able to be in a position to hold that. But it's one of those things where, for instance, the services that hospice have been doing and performing in our area for a long time have been severely curtailed because of the fundraising through the hospice shops and things like the dinners. It's meant a huge negative impact on those. Hospice have to raise about $2.5 million every year in our region to continue to exist. And so it's going to be very, very tough on all of those people, Salvation Army and whoever else. So certainly the economic effects are going to be widespread for a long time. But I think, like I was saying before, the community has responded very, very positively, I believe, to what we've been had to face. And I think it's become much, much closer. And that's the feedback that I get from everybody that I meet when I'm on my daily walks. that we've become a great deal closer. So there are some positives that have come out of it.
Thank you, Russell.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, look, I'll move we receive those members' reports. Can I have a seconder, please?
Elaine here.
Can
Happy
go
to
here.
Lindley,
Anna.
thank you.
Lily.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Date of the next meeting? The 23rd of June 2020, and with a bit of luck we may actually be back in chambers and see each other in person. So I don't know about you, this is a very efficient way of doing business, but you miss the interaction when you've actually got people that you're relating to. Okay, we need to resolve to go into a publicly excluded session. Can I have a mover that we exclude the public, please?
Russell here.
That was Anna and Charlene.
No, not Anna. Sorry, it was someone else.
It was actually me, I think.
Russell and Charlene, thank you. Okay, now we just need waiting for Alison to join us, Ali Mason to join us, and just to confirm from Rebecca that we are no longer live.
To thank those listening from home, and we'll end the live session now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those who are listening from home. And right, Ali.